Chapter 21. Massey watched as the other 6 airpods arrived in the vicinity of the first squad's hive. Watched the various angles the cameras gave him as the Marines began shooting the pods out of the sky. Well. They must have gotten hold of some of the downed weaponry. At least 2 plasma rifles were working from the ground, spearing his troops with brilliant green spikes. His androids were pretty good, but they were general-purpose expendables, strong and quick, not extensively trained for formal combat scenarios. In this kind of thing, the Marines had the edge, even though they weren't armed very well. 3 of the 6 pods flamed out and crashed. The other 3 quickly pulled out of range and hovered over the area. "Commander," came the query from the comm. "We have a problem here." "I'm not blind," Massey said. "Hold your position. Keep them in sight." He leaned back in his chair and rubbed at his chin. He turned away and called to the android standing guard at the door. "Go get Wilkes and bring him here." The android left. Yes, this was much more challenging than he had expected. Still, it was a minor setback. He had uploaded a raft of information about the planet, and his primary mission, to keep the government from securing an alien specimen, was accomplished. Should he continue this, or cut his losses and go home? On the one hand, he'd done pretty much what he'd wanted to do. He could tell the company that the surface teams had been destroyed by alien wildlife, and they would shrug it off as nothing. The company had its specimen. Another one would only be backup. On the other hand, he hated the idea of even a partial failure. Yes, it was an interesting question. He'd have to think about it a little more. It was blind luck that let Billy see the pirate moving Wilkes along, a gun jammed into the Marine's back. Wilkes had his hands crossed behind him and held with a thin carbon fiber cuff strip. The man, or was it another android, herding Wilkes along didn't glance down the corridor as he passed, his attention being on his prisoner, so he didn't see Billy crouched down by a radiator heatsink. When they had gone, Billy stood and cat-footed to the end of the cross corridor. She peeped around the corner in time to see them turn towards the control deck. Well, she'd wanted to find Wilkes, and now she had. She slipped into the main corridor and started after the 2. Wilkes had the feeling that wherever he was going, he might not be leaving under his own power. What the hell, he figured. He'd been living on borrowed time for more than a decade. He should have died with his squad back on Rim. It had all been gravy since, and not real tasty most of the time anyhow. Fuck it. If his number was up, then his number was up. He was going to go down like a man. Bueller had the squad dispersed and shifting positions every few seconds. They were lucky the airpods hadn't been designed for anything other than quick and dirty transportation. The little craft didn't have much in the way of sensing gear, only basic radar and Doppler, no sniffers or IR, and no weapons except for what the passengers themselves carried. Since the androids flying the pods had to rely on their own sense for targeting, the camo suits the Marines wore made it difficult to see them. They were hard to see, but the pods weren't, and the 2 plasma rifles the squad had would reach the same distance as the ones in the pods. So if they came down within range to splash the Marines, they risked getting smoked themselves. And since they were much bigger and better targets, so far the score was Marines 3, Pirates nada. Then again, they couldn't sit here on the ground much longer. Sooner or later the bugs would come swarming out of the mound, and that would make things a little worse for the squad. They couldn't afford to be pinned down here. "Okay, everybody listen up," Bueller said, using his scrambled opchan. "We've got to move out before company comes looking for dinner. Everybody copy. On my signal, we rocket, magnetic south. Ramirez, you take point. Blake, you cover. Everybody else, keep your head down and give me asses and elbows." Bueller didn't think the pirates could tap their opchan, but he remembered the lesson he learned from Wilkes when he and Easley had gotten nailed down during a practice assault back on Earth. "On my signal, Marines. Gainsay prior." The last was a code. It meant move at 180 degrees to the last order. If the pirates did have an ear tuned to their private line, they'd be looking for the Marines to move south. The squad would be going north, however, and it might buy them a few hundred more meters. Go! The captured android had been listening to Bueller give the order. Bueller didn't think about it until they were moving. The android didn't know their codes. When the Marines scrambled, the pirate android went the wrong way. Hey! Bueller yelled. Too late. One of the pods swooped down to the south of their position, a plasma rifle on full auto. Its charge wouldn't last long firing that way, but hosing could cause a lot of damage in a short time. The ground smoked and cratered. Rocks screamed as they shattered under the blasts of energy. The pirate android tried to stop, but ran into the dancing lines of green death. His internal fluids boiled, and he exploded like a water balloon stuck with a sharp knife. Well, it was quick. He wouldn't have suffered much. Blake pulled up, spun, and sighted at the pod. The craft looped from its dive and started to lift. Too far, Bueller yelled. Don't waste your shot. Blake grinned, her smile wide. She kept both eyes open as she aimed, followed the pod with her rifle, then squeezed off the plasma bolt. It was 500 meters if it was a centimeter, a fast-moving target. Not much chance of hitting it, Bueller thought. The green beam drilled the pod dead center. The energy bolt coruscated against the heavy plastic, ate its way through in less time than it took a nervous man to blink, and burned out the pod's repellers. The pod seemed to hang, motionless for a heartbeat, suspended in time and space. Then it fell like a fat lead ball dropped in heavy gravity. Without the repeller, an airpod had the aerodynamics of a round brick. They were close enough to hear the atmosphere whistle across the hole the plasma bolt made. The thing hit the ground hard enough to make the hard dirt splash. Nice shot, Bueller said. Like duck hunting, she said. Got to lead the target a little, that's all. They ran. The remaining two pods circled high overhead, keeping well out of range. Where are we going? Chin yelled. To the APC. It's the other way. I know. We'll circle around. Let them think we're lost. Once it gets dark, we can lose these slush brains. Yeah, Mobutu said. But can we lose them? Behind the running Marines, aliens began to emerge from the nest. Massey dismissed the android. He turned to Wilkes and said, Your Marines have proven quite adept down there. Seems they managed to get their hands on a couple of weapons, and now they're making a run for it. Wilkes grinned. That's too bad. I hope that hasn't upset your little plan any. Massey pulled his antique pistol from its holster and stuck it under Wilkes' chin, shoving the barrel into his flesh. Here's an idea. Why don't you call them and tell them to surrender? Wilkes managed to grin even wider. You gonna do what? Kill me if I don't? Massey laughed, backed off a little with the pistol. It's nice to work with professionals, after all the scum I usually have to deal with. You know what? I'm gonna kill you no matter what. Yeah, I sort of suspected that. It's necessary, you know? But you can go hard, or you can go easy. Massey holstered the gun and pulled a thin boot knife. The stainless steel glittered in the overhead lights. The knife was only about 17 or 18 centimeters long, half of that handle. But it didn't take much in the hands of an expert. Wilkes didn't doubt that Massey knew how to use it. Hell, my dick is bigger than that, Wilkes said. Not for long. Wilkes gathered himself. His hands were bound behind him, but he could use his feet. Doubtless Massey knew hand to hand, but better to die trying than not. The comm chimed. Massey moved back, outside of Wilkes' range, and touched a control. Commander, the Marines have shot down another of our pods. They are moving north, away from the APC coordinates. They aren't that stupid, Massey said. Stay with them. Targets of opportunity. He glanced at Wilkes, then back at the comm. He touched other controls on the board. A timer lit the air in one corner of the standard screen projection. It began to count down. Better safe than sorry, he said. Wilkes went for it. He took a couple of quick steps towards Massey. Massey laughed and snapped up a sidekick. The move was almost lazy, a contemptuous strike. His boot caught Wilkes in the belly and knocked him down. He hit hard, unable to use his hands to break his fall. He dug with his heels in a futile effort to get up. He'd never make it. Massey twirled the knife in his hand. "This game is being called on account of rain," he said. "Time to take my winnings and go home. So long, Sergeant Wilkes." He started towards the helpless Marine. "Drop it!" came a woman's voice from behind Massey. Evening threw long shadows over the alien landscape, and as the sun settled for the night, Bueller and his squad started their circle towards the APC. It was harder to see the airpods trailing them, and therefore it would be harder for the pirates to see them too. "What about the aliens?" Bueller asked. Mobutu shook her head. "They must have lousy senses of smell," she continued. "When we cut left back there, they kept going straight. Crummy trackers." "That's good." "Maybe," Ramirez said. "Or maybe there's something in this direction they don't want to run into. Something meaner than they are." "That's what I like about you, Ramirez. You always look on the bright side of things," Blake said. "Fuck you, Blake." "You wish. If you had anything bigger than a toothpick, I might consider it." Bueller grinned. They might all die out here, but if they could make jokes, their morale was higher than it had been since the pirates had boarded them. "Let's hustle up, Marines. We got places to go and things to do." Billy had the carbine aimed at the pirate's heart, and if he made any sudden moves, she was going to carve it out of him. The man grinned as he let the knife fall. He looked like some of the psychotics Billy had seen in the lockdown section of the hospital. "Well, well, what have we here? You the ship's mascot? Stay real still. So that explains the extra on the head count. You can't be one of those ugly Marines. You're too pretty. Crew smuggle you on board for fun and games, maybe?" Wilkes said, "Shoot him, Billy. Shoot him now." The man glanced at Wilkes. "Ah, friend of yours, eh, Sergeant? You have nice taste." He turned back towards Billy, slid a half step towards her, hands outstretched wide, trying to look harmless. "Another step and I punch your ticket," she said. "Come on. Sweet little thing like you. You don't want to kill me. Think about what it would be like, being responsible for the death of another human being. It'll give you bad dreams, honey." He slid another half step forward. Billy swallowed, her mouth dry. This man was a killer. She had seen the bodies get spaced, and he had done something with Mitch. But his hands were in the air. Shooting somebody down like this, it was different from thunking the android on the head. Billy shuffled back a step. "I'm telling you to stop right there." Wilkes managed to lever himself to his feet by leaning against a bulkhead. "Billy, this guy is a murderer. You have to put him down. Shoot!" She glanced at Wilkes. A mistake. As soon as her attention left the pirate, he leapt. God, he was fast. Billy pulled the trigger on the carbine, but he was already twisting, dropping under the line of her fire. Half a dozen rounds shattered a computer console. The noise was awful. Lights flickered as the power surged and shorted in the plugged console. She tried to realign the weapon, but too late. He hit her above the knees, and she did a half flip forward and landed on her back. "Stupid bitch," he said, as he rolled up and caught Billy by the shoulders. "Point a goddamn gun at me!" He snatched her from the floor and threw her against the bulkhead. Billy went grey as her head slammed against the wall. Even as she bounced off, he was on her, one hand grabbing her shirt, the other slapping her face. "I don't need a weapon, you stupid cunt! I could tear your throat out with my fingers!" He slapped her again. Billy felt a tooth cut inside of her lip, Blood sprayed from her mouth as he slapped her a third time. He shoved her back against the wall, lifted her feet clear of the deck by her shirt, pulled his pistol from his holster, grinned like a maniac. "But I don't dirty my hands on nothings like you." As he raised the gun to kill her, Billy saw a blur behind him. She couldn't stop her gasp. The pirate tried to turn, but she locked both her hands around the wrist of the hand that held her. It slowed him enough so that Wilkes hit him with one shoulder just above his hip. Billy felt her shirt tear as the pirate was knocked away. She fell to the floor and scrambled on all fours, towards the carbine where it had fallen. 5 meters. 4. 3. The pirate roared, and Billy twisted enough to see him. He had lost his pistol, but he was up and diving for it. 2 meters to the carbine. 1. "I'll kill both of you!" Wilkes was sprawled on his side, pushing himself along with only his left foot, towards the pirate. Billy reached the carbine, grabbed it, rolled onto her back. Wouldn't be time to get to her feet. The pirate's gun went off, but she was rolling, and she felt the slug hit the deck where she had just been. No time to aim. She pushed the gun out as if it were her fist punching, and pulled the trigger. The fire selector must have been jiggled when the gun had fallen. It went off once. Billy, expecting full auto, couldn't figure it out. She held the trigger back, waiting for more fire. Nothing. She'd have to let go and pull it again, she realized. Oh, fuck. But one was enough. The caseless 10mm round caught the pirate just below the shoulder of his gun arm, blew a hole through him. Billy saw him tumble, the gun falling from his nerveless fingers. The entry wound was the size of her fingertip, but when he fell, she saw the exit wound, high on his back, was as big as her fist. The pistol slid 2 meters away from the fallen man's fingertips. He raised his head, saw the pistol, crawled for it, stretched his good hand out for it. Billy came up, carbine held ready, and jumped for the pistol, kicked it across the room, pointed the carbine at the downed man. He rolled over, onto his back, blood pouring from the wound, spreading under his head in a coppery-smelling pool. "Stupid fucking bitch," he said. He reached for something at his waist. "Don't move! Fuck you!" He slid his left hand into a vertical slit on his coverall over his right hip. She saw him smile as he gripped it. "Billy!" Wilkes yelled. "Stop!" she screamed. He started to pull his hand out. She squeezed the trigger. The explosion was loud in the enclosed room. It lapped against the hard walls and splashed back at her. The smell of burnt propellant filled her nostrils. Her ears rang. The round hit him square in the mouth, chopped out some front teeth and blew the back of his head all over the deck and wall behind him. Whatever he had intended to do wasn't ever going to happen. She bent, tugged his hand out. He death-gripped a grenade. The safety cap had already been snapped up, and his thumb was on the detonate button. Carefully, Billy pried the grenade loose from the dead man's hand and closed the safety cap. He would have blown them all up, ruined the control room, sent the ship spiraling down to burn in the atmosphere. "Billy, cut me loose." She looked at Wilkes, blinked as if she'd never seen him before. "What?" "He set some kind of timer going. Hurry!" Numbly, Billy obeyed. She found the fallen knife, used it to cut the strand binding Wilkes. The knife was very sharp. Free, Wilkes ran to the comm board, looked at the screen. A bullet had shattered the projector. He couldn't see how much time was left. He started tapping controls on the console, swore, then moved to another screen. "What is it?" He shook his head. "I think it's a bomb set on the APC." First Squad got loose. He was afraid they'd get to the APC and come back. "What about Mitch?" "I don't know." "Call him. Find out. Billy. God damn it, Wilkes!" "Let me see if I can stop this timer. They'll need a way off the planet. Go guard the door. There are still a couple of the androids running around loose." She stared at him. "Go. Do it. If they get us, we all die. Billy moved. She pushed the selector to full auto, looked out into the corridor, didn't see anybody. She stood at the doorway, watching. Wilkes? I don't have enough time. There's got to be a failsafe, a break-off command, but I don't know the code. I'm trying to bust the APC controls open to shut the power down. Maybe the destructor's running off its systems. It's all I can do. How long? He shrugged. Could be a minute, could be an hour. I can't tell. The system won't access it from here. Billy turned back to watch the corridor. If Mitch was alive, she'd go down and find him. If not, then it didn't matter much. Damn, Wilkes said. Damn, damn, damn!